Hi everyone, thanks for coming tonight or this afternoon. This afternoon, we're going to be hearing a workshop about salary benefits and negotiation. So Emily will be presenting to us on that. And just a quick reminder, if you're here for the Graduate School Professional Development Certificate, you'll receive a Qualtrics survey this evening, and you can complete that to get credit towards this workshop. So let's go ahead and welcome Emily.
Thank you. Hey guys, my name is Emily, as she said. So I'm a PhD student in applied family science, but my undergrad and my master's are in financial planning. So hopefully I can offer a little bit of insight to the financial aspect of the job negotiation piece. But with that, I just kind of want to get a feel for where people are at. Are you guys on the job market looking? Are you just kind of anticipatory of going out to the job market? Where are you guys at? So that way I can make sure that we're kind of catering it appropriately. Yeah.
I'm graduating in May and anticipate moving. I don't know where to yet.
Awesome.
And I'm going to look for a job.
Cool. And what type of job are you looking for?
Public health.
Okay. Academic job, going out into the public sector.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
I don't know
cool.
yet. That'll be fun, whatever is available.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, congrats. May is not too far away, so that's pretty exciting, like light at the end of the tunnel type of thing. For sure. How about the rest of you guys? Where are you guys at with job search?
I am graduating in summer and looking for postdocs and have a couple of, not offer, but negotiations.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about different options.
Excellent. Congrats. That's super close. Cool. All right. Everyone else just kind of interim checking it out somewhere.
I'm graduating in August.
Yeah.
So I'm just starting my job search.
Cool. Awesome. So y'all are like right there. Like we're moving. There's finally like a consensus. We are doing this all for a reason, because sometimes in grad school it feels like we've been there for a little while. So I'll be transparent. I'm about a year out, so I have an expected graduation of May 2020. So starting to put out feelers, getting around to that. So similar boat here. With this, we started out with, we just wanted to give a quick overview of what we're going to talk about. So this is going to discuss looking at salaries, what goes into salaries, considerations for that. Also touching on some of the benefits, whether those are monetary or non-monetary benefits. And these are a couple of different, just kind of a word cluster, I don't remember what they're called, to say what we're going to talk about. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. Okay, so what you're working towards, one of the best ways to actually start with this is to have a budget. Because if I start to set a goal, it's much easier if I know where I'm going. This is the lifestyle that I'm trying to attain, whether that's maintaining where you're at, or if you're going to make considerations for that going forward. So starting with a bare bones budget. Benchmark compensation packages is another place that we're going to start out. Targeting personal compensation packages, making sure that we're negotiating fairly. And then there are a couple of different user-friendly guides that are going to be posted throughout the presentation. So since this will be recorded and uploaded, and I will offer up the slides as well, each one of these links will be ready to go. So don't feel like you have to write them down very quickly and get to that. But this is what we're going to start with. So originally, we want to have a budget in mind. This is going to be the easiest way to make sure that we are approaching this correctly. Okay, a few other key points. Negotiations are expected. So who here feels comfortable going into a negotiation as it stands today? Sort of, yeah. It's a little awkward, especially if you haven't done it before. It's a little uncomfortable because usually we've been raised with manners that we don't talk back and we don't say like, hey, but no, I don't want to do that. So it feels a little awkward, but one of the best ways to do it is to arm ourselves with appropriate research and some of the appropriate knowledge, and we'll go through some of those. You won't lose respect for negotiating. In a lot of places and under a lot of circumstances, this is an expectation and they're looking for that. Understand that perhaps they have a cap, but they may not be offering that cap to you. So it's okay to start to figure it out, because for a lot of people, it's still bottom line, it's still business. And so they want to make sure that they're getting you at perhaps like a reduced price to some extent. And they usually are leaving some room for that negotiation piece to happen because it is, again, expected. You set the bar low when you do not negotiate. So if you're someone who accepts that first offer right off the bat because you're just super excited and you're like, yes, I've been waiting for a job and I want a job. And so they finally said it. And then I say yes in the meeting and I walk out and I've already accepted it, but I don't really know the full package and what's going on there. So you have already set that standard. And so making sure that even when that offer comes about, that we're taking a moment to consider it. And we'll go through some of that in detail. But what are some of the fears or thoughts that you have about negotiating? So I probed the question of who feels comfortable. What are some of the anxieties or fears that you have with negotiating? Yeah.
So like I've told someone in the past what I'm expecting as my minimum, and they just told me we don't have a position for you. They didn't have a counter offer. They just said no.
Yeah. So a little bit of being jaded of saying like, hey, you know, I put my offer out there and someone said thanks but no thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a risk that will come with all negotiations, and perhaps if they can't meet more minimum, then it's probably not a good fit either. And I'm sure you've heard this in any job series or job talks that you've been to, is that you are interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. So if that is a minimum and that was kind of your bottom line and they can't meet that, then I would assess the situation as, well, probably not the best fit. But it doesn't necessarily make you feel good as far as like, hey, you got this vote of confidence now because you wanted to job and you felt comfortable with that. So unfortunately, that is a part of the risk, and it will be a part of that job talk with the employer. Sometimes it won't work out, but making sure that we have a standard and sticking to our standard is really important. Any other fears with going into it, or any other thoughts as far as things that you would want to know as we go through the presentation? All right, well, we will figure it out together. I'll figure out what questions we have. Okay, so I mentioned that starting with a budget is going to be really important. How many of you use a working budget right now? Yeah, awesome, cool. Do you guys use apps? Do you run it manually? Do you use like Excel?
I use an app.
An app? Nice, yeah. Same? Yeah, that's awesome. So starting with the budget is going to be key because for a lot of us, this is going to be a transition, perhaps geographically, it's going to be a transition in monetary assets and additional incomes. But with that transition, there's always a cost associated to it. And so within that initial transition, we could kick up more costs than what we're used to, right? So if I'm having to move, there might be moving expenses, there could be deposits for apartments, or if you are taking on any type of home ownership, if you're someone who has student loans, and you will actually be starting to kick up those repayment processes. So making sure that we are accounting for all of those transitions. So one of the things they talk about is considering how you live today and how you want to live in the future. There is some research that was saying, you know, college students, and maybe not everyone aligns with this, but college students live a certain lifestyle that's nice, and then they actually transition into the workplace and they're living at a lower standard of living than they were while they were in college. And that's not really what we want to do, right? Like, we want to maintain, or we want to increase that kind of living style. And so making sure that we're assessing for that. And what does this offer actually mean? What does it mean if somebody offers me $60,000 and then there's taxes and I have a student loan payment and I have taken on a new apartment in a bigger city that costs more money? All of those are going to be assessed. And so sometimes it's hard to do that in our current living status. So we'll have some tools that will show us how to assess that. There's cost of living calculators that are out here, and I don't have a quote up, but I can get into this link in just a moment. We have a screenshot of it on a slide. This is one of the best things to do if you are transitioning away from, specifically away from this area and out of state, is to assess what it looks like. So you can actually put in the information and say, I'm leaving Manhattan, Kansas. I make a GA salary of $12,000, and I'm going to be transitioning to a new job in Cleveland, Ohio at $60,000, and it'll actually break it out and say, this is how much you need to maintain that. Or if you have multiple job offers, so let's say you have Cleveland, Ohio, and LA, and you want to see that they have 2 different offers, what does that actually translate to? It'll break it down into groceries, it'll break it down into housing and gas, and so you can actually see where those expenditures are going and what is causing an increase or decrease in the cost of living. So those are super helpful. I really encourage everyone to get out to those. And then examining your current spending habits. How are you living right now? What adjustments do you want to make in the future? Or are you comfortable with where you're at? Are you comfortable with the way that you're living? And so any additional cash inflow is simply a bonus, and I can allot that to savings or other goals that I have. The other one is, as you're going through this, you'll want to prioritize needs and wants. So if you do find that perhaps I do need to make an adjustment, are you making an adjustment to a need or to a want, and starting that prioritization now before we get out and feel like this whole transition has caused a really chaotic moment? So then I know where to, kind of a phrase like where to cut the fat, where to trim the fat from the budget. And seeing if there's any interesting spending patterns. So tracking our spending not only for 1 month, but for a couple of months. One of the things we do is we set a budget, and it's kind of like a set it and forget it. Look, I did the budget and that was really lovely, and not to consider all the transitions that are coming up. So even as a student, you would have experienced this where starting a new semester could mean a new deposit on an apartment. It could mean books. It could mean additional expenditures that aren't expected. Or you get into a holiday season for yourself, and that tends to be more expensive. So making sure that that budget is moving and staying appropriate for the time that you're at. Okay. So one of the resources that you have here on campus while you're here is PowerCat Financial. They are up on the 3rd floor here in the Union, and they are free service. They're confidential. You can see them as many times as you want. So I highly encourage all of you to do that. They have trained peer counselors in these transitions from school to work, and being able to assess any job offers and job packages that you have. But more importantly, at this starting point that we're speaking about is they can help you set up a really nice spending plan and a really detailed spending plan to make sure that we're kind of launching in that direction correctly. So this is just a screenshot of it very quickly, something that you would see with them. So they're going to take in the income. This is actually going to be a full script of different expenses that most college students are seeing. So some of the hardest points is just trying to figure out where is my money going. And so we've tried to think of a whole bunch of different ideas of where it could be going and trying to do some of that legwork for you. This is broken up into 3 different categories. So what they're going to ask you to do is just simply estimate. So this is to assess the behaviors. Where do you think your money is going? Just estimate it or take your best guess at it. The second column is going to be you actually tracking it. And that third column is going to be the assessment of your estimation versus your actuals, and do I need to make adjustments? And that third column would be the final budget that comes from that. So when we're talking about the spending patterns, that first column where you're estimating, that's your behaviors. That's the way that you are assessing the money. So for a lot of students, we see them come in and we'll ask them simply, how much do you think that you're spending on going out to eat? And I'll say, I don't know, like $50 a month, not very much, just a couple run-throughs every now and again. And then they go through and they track it actually, and they're seeing it's far and away from that number. So say $100. So that's significant versus 50 to 100, and that's going to interrupt their budget. And some of that is just a process of I don't think I'm spending that much money when in fact perhaps you are. And so we're trying to create a behavioral change by having you estimate that first. Okay, so this is another worksheet that we actually have out on our website. I pulled it up for you guys because this one is really nice just for breaking it down very quickly for what an actual salary offer looks like. Okay, so this is one that's out on our website. So if I'm using that example of $60,000, this is already going to be pre-formulated to take out some taxes. So it's set at 25%, and you can make an adjustment for that based off of the tax bracket, or you'll also want to consider state taxes if you're going to be here in Kansas. If you're going to be in a place like Texas where they don't have income tax, you can take that off. But making a consideration for tax and seeing that immediately the $60,000 that they put on a piece of paper and slid my way is actually only going to start at $45,000 immediately after taxes. If you want to make this a little more complex, and for most job offers that you guys would be going into, you would want to add an additional line of a retirement fund. So most traditional retirement accounts are going to be gross, so pre-tax is where you would add that in. If you have what's called a Roth option, that's going to be after tax, and so you can add in that line, and that'll start to break out exactly how much money are you going to have as a take-home. So what this is showing is this broke it down into a monthly amount of $3,700 roughly, and then let's say that I have, this is a debt management piece, so if you are taking on student loans and have that type of repayment coming in, you'll also want to make a consideration for that. So let's say that my student loans are $300 a month. And now this is actually what I have to work with for the month. This is my true number. So a lot of times, again, when somebody gives us this gross salary offer, it's really hard for me to equate, yeah, but what does that mean that I can actually afford for an apartment, or what does that actually mean that I can afford in groceries, and maybe I have a commute that I don't have here. So that's what this is trying to do, is trying to break it down into some more bite-sized pieces. This percentage, just to, for acknowledging it, it's going to show a debt to income ratio, how much of your income is going to service your debt. And so this one's at 8%, which is fairly reasonable. And then you could take this information from that larger budget that you did and put it in here. And let's say that the rent around the area that I want to live in is $1,000. So is that reasonable? Is that not reasonable based off of my other expenditures that I've already broken out? This final number is going to show what's left over then for additional expenditures or emergency funds, that type of thing. So this is all out on PowerCap Financial's website. This is going to be tucked away under student loans, and then if you scroll to the bottom, it's going to be student loan repayment form. And so this is just, I think it's really nice because it's a quick and easy budget, but it's already starting to make this large number into bite-sized pieces, which is really helpful for most people. Okay, so switch back over. So as you're going through this, one thing that you'll want to also consider is, how do I want to spend this paycheck? So we saw that this is a monthly amount that I'm going to have. So say I have $3,000 to allot over the month. What do I want to do with that? So one of the very first things that we advise everyone to do is to start with an emergency fund and make sure that we have a really nice cushion. 3 to 6 months is what you'll hear financial planners recommend, and that's going to be for all of the necessities that it is for your monthly living. How do I keep the lights on? How do I eat? How do I have a place to live? Those type of things. The reason that it's 3 to 6 months is because typically within 3 months, most people are able to find work again. And so if something were to disrupt that, if a crisis were to happen, something happens and maybe you have to transition back home, hopefully a 3-month cushion, but 6 months is more conservative and has a much larger cushion to absorb a crisis. But we're making sure that I have time, should anything unexpected happen, that I can still live and make that happen. So fixed expenses, these are the things that typically aren't changing, so I can assess for those. That's going to be rent, perhaps some of your utilities are a little more fixed, and then starting that saving. So you can save for really fun things too. You don't just have to say like everything is for a bill. If you have a vacation, if you're somebody who wants to come back to K-State football games, whatever it is that you like to spend money on, that's fun and exciting, your entertainment expenses, you can save up for that. And then we also have an additional, this is broken into showing that we have different bank accounts, if that's helpful for you, if you're somebody who likes to compartmentalize that. So then we have additional ones, and these are going to be these, without going around the table, these are showing that I have those additional expenditures, like I'm going to Starbucks and I'm going to spend money on gas, and some of those that might be a little more variable, but I know that they're happening within the month, rather than just saying, oh, here's like a chunk of money for that. It's actually acknowledging that, hey, I like to go out to eat, or I like to do these other things, and this is trying to account for that. Speaking to the way that this is set up right now, know that you can have different accounts within your bank. You can have a checking account, you can have different savings accounts, so you can have your paycheck split. So even here at K-State, you can say that I want 50% to go into my checking account and 25% to go into this savings account and another 25 into a different savings account. So maybe I'm saving up for a vacation or something after graduation. This is for my emergency fund, and the checking account is for all of my expenses. So for me, sometimes if I don't have to do it manually and it automatically just slices out that way, it's a lot easier to manage. Okay, so there are a couple of different budgeting apps that are out there, and these are just a couple of them. If you put in a quick search for them, you'll find them as well. One that I'll speak to that I've had experience with is mint.com. And this is one that you can put on your phone. You can actually add in your banking information, and so it'll track your expenses. It'll break it out into a nice pie chart and show these are the expenditures, this is where you're spending money. You can also set a cap on that and say, I only want to be spending $20 on gas a month, and it'll send you an email as an alert saying you're getting really close to this, you should watch out. So for a lot of people, this is a really nice way of kind of having a hands-off approach of, I am trying to track things, but maybe I don't necessarily want to sit down and reconcile everything on a weekly basis. So these are a couple of really nice ways to do that. Okay, so this is going to take a shift into looking at the salaries now. So benchmarking your salary, you want to determine what is the right job title that I'm actually going out and searching for. So as you're going into the negotiation, one of the key points here is making sure that I've done the appropriate research to be able to have a conversation about negotiation. If I'm going to counteroffer something, I should have some rationale behind that. I can't just say, no, I think I'm worth like $10,000 more because I'm a really excellent candidate. You actually have to have some research and some knowledge to back that, and that's going to show that you as a candidate have actually gone through and you put the time and effort to assess this, and you know your worth, and so they know exactly who they're dealing with at this point. So know the right job title to go out and search for, whatever that means for you. Explore the area that you'll be working. So this is going into looking at that cost of living adjustment and that calculator of saying, hey, I'm moving from Kansas and I'm going to be going out to California, and that's going to be a significant change. So what does that need to look like for me, considering your lifestyle and considering the budgets that we were just speaking about? Research the salary range that you plan to work in. So what are some of the minimums, or what are those entry levels that people are being offered? And then what is it for those who have been a little more tenured, 5 years into the profession? And what are some of the experiences that can notch you up from that entry level? So if this is entry level and these are their expectations, here are additional things that I have above and beyond that entry level salary position. And so now I can counter with that. But I need to know what that range is to make sure that whatever I say is what I believe I want isn't going to be something that's really outrageous as well. So set your target salary, have your standard in mind. So like you were talking about, hey, this is my minimum. It is really nice to have that benchmark set. So that way I already can make a determination when they make that offer of whether or not this is something I want to consider or not consider and put that time and effort into. Because the negotiation piece is a bit of a back and forth, and it is timely for yourself and for the employer. Benchmarking your benefits and knowing what's really important to you is really good. Healthcare really important because it's you and your significant other and a child, and making sure that I have appropriate coverage for that. Is making sure that I have a really great retirement plan important to you, and making sure that maybe there's a match incentive in there that I would really like to have. So making sure that you know what those benefits are, and then developing a budget to calculate your minimum acceptable salary. Okay, so there are a ton of different places to go to start looking at salaries and what is being offered and what's out there for most people. These are a couple of them that you might be familiar with. And if you've tested any of these out, you'll understand why putting in the right job titling and job status is going to be really necessary, because you can put in school teacher and it can go from here to all the way up to here, and making sure that we are being as specific as possible. Okay, so this is going to be an example, and I apologize because these shares aren't going to make it very easy, but this is an example of going out to salary.com, and I'm putting in market analyst in Dallas, Texas.
So I got my job, I figured out exactly what that means, I got my location, so I know where I'm going. What this is going to show is all the details of what is going to be required for this job, what's acceptable for this job, and you can make that assessment. What these circles in super tiny print are going to say though, is this is going to have the average for an experience of 0 to 1 years, 2 to 5 years, and then 5 to 10 years plus. And so these are going to then associate that job title that's going to be at the very top, so it's going to say market research analyst 1, 2, or 3. So again, kind of knowing where is it that I fall, where is my tenure and experience going to be considered here, and then which pieces of the requirements or what most people have expectations of do I fall in line with. Am I more entry level that my experience, like, oh, I've done a little bit and I've got some school to back that up, or have I actually gone out and I have some field experience in that and practical experience with it that this is going to allow me to justify perhaps a higher salary. So this is the range that we're talking about. So making sure that maybe if I'm more entry level, that the 43,000 might be more appropriate, and then making an assessment of how far up I can go. So in this situation, it wouldn't make sense for me to say, hey, my minimum is $80,000 when I'm seeing that some of the max and the more tenured people are going to be only at $67,000, right? So making sure that I have an appropriate range, I can speak to this and I can go in and say, by the way, I was looking at your job listing. Here are the things that I match up with. I was looking at other market analysts within the area. Here are some additional requirements that I hit. And beyond those, this is the other things that I can help with within this role. And that will give us a basis to start to have that salary negotiation. Has anyone been out on these websites and messed around with them to see what they look like or where they fall? Yeah, they're pretty interesting. But they can also be a little complex and a little tricky, so definitely take your time with it. Okay, so here are a couple of principles that we wanted to touch on. Salary negotiation begins only after you have received a job offer. So a lot of times we get a little antsy and we really enjoy the job and perhaps we really enjoy the employer, or we just have kind of that pressure of I need to know where I'm going next. That we want to start to have those salary negotiation talks in the very beginning. That's when it's going to be inappropriate. It's not appropriate to bring that up on interview number 1. So if you have had a phone interview or a Zoom interview, and that's the first step to getting into that role, that is not the appropriate time to start asking about salary and specifically negotiating. And then know what you're worth and be able to be prepared and to justify it. So again, this is all going to go into that research piece of making sure that you can really speak to the role, to the expectations, and know yourself and give yourself credit for that. So if they're saying that you need experience in a specific area, you'll want to have queued up, here are all the ways that I've done that, and maybe I've had additional approaches to that one requirement, so I can speak and apply it to a couple of different areas for them. Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I don't know the American culture, but before we decide to if I can accept the job or not, I need kind of information of the salary, how much I can get from the company or institute. So according to the American law, they basically give us some kind of approximate salary information before we decide it.
Okay, so I didn't know that. So there's, okay, so you,
actually, before I received the job offer, I mean, before I decided to get the offer, I think I need some kind of information about the approximate salary. So, but if I ask how much the salary before I can, receive the job offer, is it polite things in America?
so typically you will wait until the job offer, and at that point, that's when they're going to reveal the salary to you, is within that job offer. So when they say that we would like to offer you the position, that's typically when they're going to reveal their number. In some cases, they will have listed the number along with the job posting, but that is not a consistency. So sometimes you'll know it going in and you'll have an idea. More traditionally, it's going to be upon the offer that they actually show the number to you.
You mean that I might know the approximate.
Yeah, so you might know, and then if you go out and kind of research some of these, they'll give you an idea of what you could be expecting for that, and you'll kind of know that benchmark. But yeah, sometimes it comes a lot later, unfortunately, and it could be post 1 to 2 interviews, and on that third interview, they finally show you that here's the job offer, and here is the approximate salary, or the actual salary, sorry. Yeah, which will be really traditional. If you are going into academia and you're looking to be an academic, so assistant professor, those type of roles, typically, or in my experience and in my field, so I'll speak to that and what I know, is usually 3 interviews. So like a Zoom interview, and perhaps an additional interview, and then an on-campus interview. So usually anywhere from 2 to 3 before you'll actually see the offer. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay. So there are going to be ways that the employer is going to try to probe and see where you're at, and that might feel a little premature and it might feel a little uncomfortable. So we just wanted to give you a couple of different examples. Are you willing to accept the advertised salary? What would it take for you to accept this job? And if you were to receive a job offer from us, would you accept it? So how do you think that you would respond to these? So let's focus on number 2. What would it take for you to accept this job? How would you respond to that? So let's put some content to it. If I were going to be moving from Kansas, where we're at, to the East Coast, and my family's situated here, my home and kind of my roots are situated here, and this is a really great place because clearly I've applied for it, so I'm interested, and they're saying, what would it take for you to accept this offer? I'm going to take into consideration all the changes and transitions that I'm going to have to go through, right? So I'm going to have to move across the states, and so maybe for me, I would like to see additional benefits and some compensation for that. But I can't necessarily throw out a number and a salary, but those are the considerations that are going on up here. So I'm needing to find a way to facilitate that conversation to them. Here are the things that I'm going to need to see. How would you approach some of those conversations or that reaction?
You know, you could say if your benefits are matching what I believe my skill set is, then I might be able to accept this job.
Yeah. Yeah. So saying like, hey, I've looked over the benefits and these seem appropriate for me and they feel like they would be accommodating to my lifestyle. Yeah, absolutely. Which is, again, not throwing out a number, but it's just saying I've looked over the compensation package and I've looked over these benefits and I've made considerations for all of the changes that this could come with. And I feel like it's a good fit, or I feel like it's not a good fit. And if it's not a good fit, here are the things that I feel like could help me make that adjustment. But again, staying away from actually putting the dollar to it, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to make them put the dollar out there first, right? Even though I've done some of this research, I still don't necessarily want to be the first one. So I want to see their cards first if I can manage it. Okay. So negotiating this, so review the offer in detail. This is if you have received an offer package before, sometimes you'll get an offer letter, and this is going to state that you have a salary of X. Perhaps they might highlight a little bit of their benefits, talking about retirement or additional options, perhaps a compensation package or bonus structure. That'll be out there. But remembering to look through all of the benefits once you get that benefits package, and checking out insurance and other monetary and non-monetary benefits that we'll talk about in just a second. So remembering if they offer it to you, they want you. So the same way that you applied for the job, you are clearly interested in it. If they offer it to you, they want you to. So realize that there is some leverage within that, and that it's not something that typically when someone makes an offer that they just say, oh, no, never mind, we don't want it at all. So usually there is some room, and like we talked about, it is expected that a negotiation will occur. And how does the offer fit with your benchmark? So once you've set that standard for yourself, how is this fitting into it? Is this appropriate for me on the monetary side? And is this appropriate for me for a practical standpoint? Is this something that I want to do? And does this have a really good footing professionally?
So if I didn't know how to go through all of this, who would I employ to do this for me?
Yeah, so so your free resource would be PowerCat Financial, which is upstairs here.
Let's say I graduate.
So postgraduates, you might be able to have somebody who's a professional do it. I'm trying to think of who would be the best resource. So going to an HR person would be appropriate rather than going to like a financial planner or something like that. If you know someone who would be willing to consult on it, that would be advantageous as well. But usually an HR advocate can break it down for you.
My husband.
Yeah. See, look, you're like, oh, I got it. Yeah, no. But an HR person who might be located within that company, they're typically really versed on it to say, hey, this is what our package is. This is typical of what our employees do, and then you can see whether or not that's appropriate for you. Yeah. Yeah, because I will be transparent with you. They can be a little overwhelming, especially if you have 3 different insurance options, and here are the different funds within the retirement account, and maybe you have different options within that. And so if you're someone who doesn't feel well versed in that, I would definitely encourage you to have somebody look over it, because you are setting this up from today until whenever that time is in the future. And with that, make sure that you're looking over the benefits at least on an annual basis. We find, so I did some financial planning down in Dallas for a retirement firm, and we found that a lot of people started day one and they set whatever that retirement contribution was set at. So they set it at 5%, and they never adjusted it over the 30 years that they were there. They never rebalanced that portfolio within the retirement account. So making sure that you're going back and analyzing those benefits, and that it's not like a set it and forget it. Okay, so aim high and be realistic. So again, this is backing it up with all of that research and that knowledge, but also being realistic and recognizing that, you know, maybe I only fall into that 0 to 1 year experience, and so I'm going to have to bite the bullet, and this is a part of that first stepping stone. And so being practical with it, but also making sure that you know your own worth within that. Facing the negotiation of a competitive market, we spoke about, talk about yourself in the employer's terms and not yours. And so making sure that whatever this position is that I'm going for, I know exactly what they're looking for. And so I can use their terminology, I can use maybe parts of their mission statement, parts of their company to show that, one, I've done my research, but here's how I fit in really well for you. And you're not going to have to make all of these additional considerations. I've already found a way that I can fit into this role really well. So doing your research on that. Explain how to experience, how your experience fits into their performance goals, products, and conditions. Show how you will contribute to the employer's mission, and state how you will contribute to the employer's company from day one. So what a lot of people are looking for are self-starters, people who are proactive and active and motivated. And if you guys are in graduate school, you are already very motivated individuals because you've made the choice to take on additional education. So highlight that and show that you are a highly motivated person. And here are the things that if I get there on day one, week one, here's what I will work to accomplish for you. People really like to see that you have put in some thorough thought into goals and saying, hey, by the end of 6 months, this is where I will hope to progress to. And I know that this is a really important requirement. that perhaps I don't have right now, but I will work towards that and I will have a goal of accomplishing that at this time point. So if there are parts that maybe you're not hitting all of the markers, my advice to you would be to find a way to say, but this is how I can do it. And here's my action plan that I've already set in place. So with that, it takes out the guessing game of, I wonder if they could get there. Is this going to be a little risky? Maybe there's another candidate that we're weighing some options with. This shows that you're already a self-starter, and I've already decided here's where I'm going to go. Okay, so be sure to sell yourself. For a lot of people, this can feel a little uncomfortable. For others, we have this confidence, we're there, but making sure that we have really kind of given ourselves that pep talk that I'm ready to go, that I am a valuable team player, and someone would be really lucky to have you, and that you are going to be a real attribute to someone's team, and making sure that you have that. So don't assume the employer remembers your resume. We have our resume memorized, we know all of our experience, but remember that we have to remind them of it because perhaps they've gone through others, maybe they've simply slept since the other day, and so making sure that we reiterate these are the things that are on there. Again, this is going to go into your experiences. Don't assume that they've taken what was on this one page or several page documents, depending if you have a resume or CV, and they've translated that into all the ways to have a practical implication into their position and their job setting. So we actually have to work as a translator for them and make sure that they can really see all of these experiences and why they are going to be really great attributes for this role. So stress your work ethic, make sure that you are your best advocate. So sometimes as a way to react to things, people will downplay themselves. This is not an opportunity where we want to self-deprecate or make those small personal jokes. This is a place where I really want to stand firm and show them that I am the best candidate for this, and that we keep that going throughout the interview process. Anticipate objections, so script your response and know what you're going to say if this were to be something that happens. Listen closely, think, and anticipate through this process. So with all of that, I would recommend anticipating what questions could they ask me, what happens if this starts to go into a place where this isn't going to fit any longer for both of us, and maybe we recognize that. How am I going to disengage with this? What's an appropriate way to say, based off of other considerations, I think I'm going to move forward in a different direction. Making sure that we stay professional at all times. Within the interview process, recognize that anybody that you come in contact with, you will want to stay within your professional standards, because everyone talks to one another, and if they had an interaction with whoever the potential job candidate was, typically they're going to relay those messages back. So making sure that just because you had a conversation with someone who appears to be staff and it was a very quick interaction, you felt like you could let your guard down. We've heard a lot of experiences of people doing that, and then that gets turned around very quickly because you're in this professional interview at all times. So make sure that we're setting the stage appropriately, and then don't get personal and be careful of oversharing and getting into all of the personal attributes. While that is going to be a part of your package, right now we're trying to focus on the employment aspect. Okay, so these are going to be some of the benefits that we're going to talk about. So after you've received an acceptable salary, negotiate your benefits. There are some different benefit packages out here, so salary.com is going to be one of them. Check your employer's non-salary benefits, so we'll get into those in just a second, and then add up all of the values that you have. So if you're someone who doesn't currently have to commute and you are entertaining the job that says you're going to have to commute an hour in traffic, what is that value to you? Is that something that you're willing to give up? Is that something that you want to see some additional compensation for, whether that's monetary or non-monetary? What does that look like for you? Sometimes we get really lost in making those overall assessments. So this is going to be one of them from salary.com. So taking that same market research analyst, this is going to break down the different benefits and the value of the benefits within that salary. So this is, again, I apologize, this is really small, but looking at Social Security, 401k, healthcare, do you have time off? What does all of this break down to, and putting an actual dollar amount to it? So as you're doing some of your research, these are going to be additional considerations that you want. Just because one says here is $60,000 and the other says this is $50,000, perhaps they have better benefits, and the $50,000 is going to actually, over time, give you more money. So making sure that it's not just the gross salary and that large number that we're making the assessment off of, that there's additional considerations. Okay, so I spoke to this a little bit. So we have our monetary, which is going to be our salaries, our bonuses, signing on bonuses. These are near monetary, so these are going to be that benefits package, health insurance. What are my options there? As you're considering health insurance, you'll want to think of first, how is it that you're using your health insurance now? Are you someone who needs prescriptions? Are you someone who never goes to the doctor? And so perhaps I can have a healthcare plan that doesn't make all of the extra considerations for someone who perhaps is utilizing the services more often, making sure that we're assessing those and that they're appropriate for us. Overtime pay, do you have time off? Do you have vacation time? Is there relocation assistance if you needed to do that? Other ones to consider, are you someone who has a certification or needs to get a certification? Is that something they're going to help you with? And then once you acquire that licensures or certification with that, typically there's continuing education. Is that something they're going to help you with? Do you like to go to conferences and be involved in local or national organizations that are also tied into this position? Making sure that we're considering all of those things, and if those are things that are really important to you, we want to bring those up. So non-monetary is going to be title, and for some people this seems very surface level, but you've worked really hard in seeing what is it that I'm going to actually be titled as, and what is my status going to be within this company and the company structure. So this is going to be that non-monetary. Training and education, review dates, where are kind of that prospect for review, and where are going to be the times that I may have the opportunity to step up? What do those transitions look like? Travel assignments, home equipment usage, do you need a laptop? Do you get an additional cell phone? Is that something that you're responsible for? If you're having to commute or travel a lot, are they helping with that? Are they giving you a car? And then weeks of vacation. So each one of these are going to be things that you'll want to take into assessment of that value piece, but you're not necessarily going to see it within that job offer, right? We're not going to see it just located in the salary. These are additional considerations. Is anyone looking to go into an academic position? Okay, perfect. So academic positions are going to look just a little bit different than our typical kind of public sector. So our initial offer is typically verbal. This is going to be something that happens in person or over the phone, perhaps on Zoom. But one thing that has been acknowledged and pushed forward a lot of times is to make sure that this is in writing and that it's not formal until it's in writing. And so this is going to show that we have a certified offer and that it's here and we can track it and it's tangible, rather than on the Zoom call, they kind of mentioned, hey, here's the offer and we'll get back to you. Making sure that we keep in mind that it doesn't really exist until it's in writing. And I would say that that is appropriate for non-academic jobs as well. So very similar considerations. Does this fit for you personally and professionally? But here's going to be the additional piece. Does this line up with your research? Does this line up with teaching? Are they going to support your line of research? Do they have the equipment and the facilities? Do they have the appropriate faculty and staff to help with that? Do you like the people and the culture and the location? For some people, coming to Kansas State in the middle of Kansas is an absolute dream. And for others, this is perhaps less ideal for them. So making sure that you could see yourself there. For a lot of academic positions, there is going to be a certain amount of commitment to that geographical location. And so taking time to explore that. Is it appropriate for you? Is it appropriate for your family or anybody else that you would want to make considerations for? Is the offer of good quality? Do you have offers and positions available and that it's okay to turn it down? So if you have additional offers, this is where you'll want to say, thank you for this offer. I would like a week to look it over, a couple of weeks to look it over. Just because somebody makes an offer, and this goes to non-academic positions as well, you do not have to say yes right away. In fact, they would encourage you to not say yes right away, to say, thank you, I would like to consider this, and perhaps they set a timeline for you, but have queued up in your mind what is an appropriate timeline for you as well. If they hand over a large benefits package, maybe it's going to take a couple of weeks to really sort this out and figure out all of these additional values that we just talked about, monetary and non-monetary. So making sure that it's okay to do some comparison here, and it's okay to turn it down. That can be really scary because, again, we've worked really hard and we're so excited that we've gotten this job, and maybe we're lucky enough to have a couple of different offers. And making sure that we stay professional in the way that we do turn that down. We're not trying to burn any bridges, but it is okay to turn it down. So negotiating, it's recommended that you do this in some type of formal writing. So for most of us, that's going to be via email. This allows you time to think and respond in the way that you want to. Within this negotiation piece, we were just talking about it in a class that I was in the other day, to be very detailed with the negotiation. So here are the considerations that I'm looking for. Perhaps I need a graduate assistant, or I need certain lab equipment, or I need access to a statistical software, whatever that is for you, and making sure that I'm very detailed within that negotiation of here are some of the additional considerations that I'm going to need to be successful in this position. Negotiating won't be harmful to if you do research and are polite, you're beneficial for the job. Not negotiating is not seen as a good thing. So keep this in mind. This is, like we've talked about a couple of times now, this is actually expected. So it could reflect poorly that there was no negotiation done on this side. So if that helps take comfort in it, maybe that'll feel a little more comfortable as you go forward. So negotiating, pay attention to the size, rank, and type of the institution. This is going to play into the type of salary that's offered, as well as the range that they may be able to offer, and the access to resources that they have. So if you're looking to go to a predominantly teaching school, if you're looking at an R2 versus an R1, so a Research 1 versus a Research 2 school, they could have vastly different abilities to pay within their compensation packages. And then they're also going to, you can consider whether or not they've had a salary compression. So this is where perhaps faculty hasn't seen a raise in a little while, that there's other restructuring processes in place, and figuring out what does it look like for me to be successful, and what is this timeline going to look like? Is this a tenured position or a non-tenured position? Is it going to be 9 months or 12 months? What are the requirements? Oh, jumped out a little bit. So a couple of these we've already talked about. Is there a base salary? Are there opportunities for bonuses? Are there opportunities for growth? And you'll want to know that monetarily, and then as well as just a professional. What does it look like for me to continue to grow and develop within this? And grow and develop your research, especially if you're looking towards an R1 or an R2. What are my opportunities to continue this line of research and put an emphasis on this? Because a lot of people are really fueled by a passion that I want to get that information out. So what are the ways that they can be helpful in that? And then how do grants impact your salary? So here at K-State, we have a couple of different ways that new faculty can have grants offered to them, and it's called seed funding, which allows them to maybe take on a graduate assistant and get their research up and running. But post that time frame, it's their responsibility to then find funding for that. So are you someone who's going to have to supply some of these resources through grants and grant applications, or is this going to be something that's already considered within the salary?
They are, the employer usually looking for the people who have grant experience, or
Yes.
already they got the grant.
So usually you'll want to have, and this is just what I have been told, having grant experience is going to be really advantageous. It's going to show that you've already had experience in doing so. If you don't, there are different courses that you can take, or some things that you can speak to, or even going to functions like this where they talk about grant writing if you haven't actually done it yourself. But a lot of academic positions will require grant writing.
Kind of experience.
Yeah. So that is an additional way for them to fund research and research assistance and getting their publications, presentations, those type of things out there. Yeah. So a couple of other ones are looking at space and funds available. Teaching load, are you going to, how much are you going to be required to teach? Again, this is going to be a consideration if you're at a teaching university or a more research emphasized university. That can change. Can you have a course waiver for the first year? How many new preps are you going to have to do within a semester? Those are going to look a little bit different than if somebody were to give you a course that was already really well developed and you're taking over that course. Or is this going to be something that is a new consideration? You're going to have to gather all the materials for that. Each one of these, you can negotiate what this looks like for you. So you can say within year one, I want to teach only one new prep for the year, and the others are going to be courses that are already developed, or you can ask for a course waiver within that first year, making sure that you can be successful, especially in that transition time. Yeah, and then there's buyout options to do research as well. And so making sure with this, I would highly encourage you to speak with your major professor or someone in the dean's office that has experience in doing all of this, because this is very complex, and making sure that you get this right, because typically the way that it works is once you've negotiated your startup package, it doesn't renegotiate later on. This is something that is set. Okay, so startup funds, generally 2 to 3 years, so that's where you're going to have this additional aid money to get that research up and running. It's okay to negotiate the amount and timing, and absolutely you should do that, whatever is appropriate for you. So this is going to, again, be things to cover technology, supplies, travel, students, perhaps even housing assistance. This is an allotment for you to make that transition and to be comfortable, but this is not something that continues typically past 2 to 3 years. Okay, so additional considerations for negotiating: expenses to visit, for home research or for home search, moving expenses, spousal positions if you have somebody traveling with you as well, tuition waivers, summer income opportunities, especially if you're on that 9-month appointment, consulting time if you're doing that. And then we have most important parking spaces, because if you have tried to park at Kansas State University, you know that it can be very limited. So what does all of that look like? Specifically, some of these, like, hey, if I am moving and making a transition, are you going to pay for me to go out and find a new home and find a new apartment and help me with moving? What does that look like? Because that can be really costly, especially as we're still here as students and trying to find time to travel out and do all of that. If I am on a 9-month appointment, are there opportunities? So within our department, typically those who have been teaching already as a 9-month appointment, they're going to be top priority before graduate students and other considerations for teaching over the summer, if you are interested in that. Okay, so actually making a decision, more offers, better negotiation power, and to be active in your employment search. And so academic and non-academic, if you can, you want to have an offer or two, or however you're comfortable with it. That way we can do some comparison of saying, this one looks really good here, I really enjoyed this. I was kind of iffy about their culture, but they're offering more money, and what is that value to me? This one is going to be a much larger move, and I can't, I'm not quite sure if I'm comfortable with making that. That way I have a real consideration for all of them, with each search that I'm doing. So with that, you do have to be fairly active. Applications can be a little long and tedious, and so maybe that's sitting down for an afternoon or a weekend and saying, hey, today's the day that I'm going to fill out a whole bunch of job applications and send those out. And making sure that each one of those documents is ready to go. So typically a CV, a cover letter, or a letter of intent, and then a research statement. If you're going into a teaching facility, what is your teaching philosophy, those type of things. Thoroughly evaluating the job offer on a basis of salary and non-salary benefits. But you also want to know how you feel about it. So we talked about, what is it to come to Kansas State? What is it to move to another location? Did you enjoy the city? So not just the university and those interactions, but did you enjoy the city? Could you see yourself having a good time there? Are there places that have access to your hobbies and to your interests? That's going to be really important, because out of all of this, there is some self-care and making sure that we felt very comfortable in that town. Okay, so additional resources that are out there for academic positions inside higher ed is one that a lot of people go to. Each one of these things, as I mentioned, is going to be out there on the PowerPoints for you to be able to access. And these are some of the final thoughts that we wanted to touch on. So what are the promotional opportunities of the position that you're looking at? So making sure that I have room for growth and development, and they're going to help and support with that. How and when will my performance be reviewed? I want to know my opportunities to have myself assessed, but I also want to assess my position and be able to have feedback and a conversation and be open and honest with where we're at together. What kind of salary progression would be expected in the first 3 to 5 years? So again, this growth opportunity, but looking at it from a more monetary asset or implication. Never blindly accept the offer at the time of the original offer. So this is again kind of, we can get really antsy and really anticipatory of an offer, and especially if we really like the position and it's something that you have been interested in for a while. Sometimes our immediate reaction is to grin and say, yes, absolutely, but to make sure that we're giving ourselves time with that. Ask for time to consider the entire compensation package, which we touched on. Have that in mind. What is that for you? Do you feel comfortable with a week or a couple of weeks? Did they set the timeline for you already and say, hey, get back to us within the next month after you've looked over everything? And be sure to get the complete job offer in writing and be sure to read all of it. Each one of those benefits is going to have an impact for your future. If they don't have a well-rounded compensation package for retirement and health insurance and additional benefits, each one of those can have a much larger impact in the future than that salary ever could. So making sure that we are holding in the values of how we feel about that culture, but also the values that we have as far as those monetary and non-monetary assets. All right. And then I just wanted to point out one more time that we do have Paragot Financial here. While you are a student, you can go as many times as you want. All of it is free and confidential. And so feel free to utilize them. If you go out to their website, it's just the very first thing that you see says request an appointment. You'll give them more information as far as your class schedule, and then they will actually adhere to that because they want to be ready for you and work with your schedule. But with that, my name is Emily. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask those or you can email those over. I also work at PowerCat, so you can come up and see me. We can look over job offers and packages more intimately too. So thank you.
But sorry, we can get the presentation.
Yeah.
We can download.
Yes, it will be put on it should be put on like the graduate student page.
Yeah. That way you guys have access to all those links and you can go in and check those out. You can download some of those budget worksheets as well. Yeah.
Well, okay. Thank you so much, Emily. Well, that concludes our professional development seminar for today. I hope you all had a good time and learned something beneficial that can help you when you go out into the workforce if you're looking for jobs right now. As Abby said at the beginning, don't forget to fill out the Qualtrics survey, the feedback survey, if you are trying to get the professional development certificate. And if you weren't able to sign up with Abby, she had a sign-up sheet on her computer, make sure to see me, Victoria, and write your name and your email before you go so I can get that sent over and we can make sure all your information is documented for the certificate. Let's give one more round of applause to our presenter, Emily. So there should be a little box there, like.
Why you can work with the